Welcome to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet with Ryan Poterack from Poterack Capital Advisory. You have unique values, objectives, fears, life experiences, and biases. Any financial professional who ignores or minimizes the importance of your story may not be able to help you achieve your ideal outcomes or hit your goals. It's time to experience the PCA difference. In this podcast, we help business executives, soon-to-be retirees, and solutions-based individuals overcome the anxiety leading up to their upcoming years. We do this by initiating in-depth discussions about the financial aspects of retirement, like tax planning and asset allocation, alongside, and often overlooked, personal and lifestyle aspects. Join us for this journey where we explore retirement from a contrarian point of view, as Ryan draws from years of experience and qualified guest professionals to help you explore the true purpose of your money in retirement and the impact you want to make in your golden years. Ryan Poterack and Alec Quaid offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Private Advisor Group and Poterack Capital Advisory are separate entities. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized legal or tax advice. Please consult your legal or tax advisor regarding your specific situation.
Welcome, everybody. Ryan Poterack here for my podcast, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet, with our co-host, Charrise McCrorey. How are you doing, Charisse?
I'm doing amazing, Ryan. How about you?
I'm not doing amazing. I feel like the change of season. My throat's a little scratchy, but I'm hoping to hold out today.
Be a pro.
So you have easy questions, I hope.
I do.
Awesome.
We're gonna talk about healthy conflict today in
boy.
communications, relationship, and finance. I
Okay,
think
bring
this is a juicy subject. I love it. And I know you love conflict too, and most people do not love conflict. Why is that?
Well, I'm also in the business of communication. When you think of something that is completely intangible, like advice and investments and planning, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't test drive it. So let's give it a whirl.
All right. So, in your opinion, what makes conflict healthy versus unhealthy?
Well, I think I would define conflict as a difference of opinion or point of view, which gives both people communicating the opportunity to learn more than they know already themselves. I mean, any of us know what we think about whatever. We don't necessarily know what other people think. And so I like to embrace that as an opportunity, particularly when it's really smart people that have a different opinion than me. I'm already an intensely curious person, and that makes me more curious to find out how can this smart person view an issue completely different than me. So I win. I mean, I either get to test my patience and seek to understand how they get there, even if at the end I still disagree, maybe even more so. Or it's an epiphany that wakes me up to something I had never considered. So that's how I would look. I don't take the word conflict and impose a negative connotation. That, I guess I would probably start there.
Yeah, and that is unusual. People take conflict personally.
Yes, and I do take things personally. I don't like when I feel, offended or hurt, but that also is a test. If you put yourself out there, it's like most anything else in life, that if you have more reps, if you just do it more often, then you can if I feel like, ouch, that would have really hurt me 10 years ago, I have the same feeling, I process it differently. So I don't know if I'm taking it less personally or not, but I'm probably a bit more patient and discerning and trying to figure out, well, I don't think the person I'm talking to intended to poke me in the way that it felt. So that's how I flip it then into, I like to ask questions. That's where my curiosity manifests itself in communication.
And that's where people get to with a little more maturity. I think we tend to be more curious and assume good intent. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
It's one of the advantages of having many years in our under our belt.
Yes, in an industry of questioning, and it's, I feel like on the other side of that, when like I'm comfortable with, we'll use the word conflict, it seems so pure and simple that it's then hard it's free, it's liberating, to not have my own self-worth or feelings for the day connected about what somebody else happens to say that may be unintentional.
Right. And they may be right in your book or they may be wrong, but it's good to understand it.
I agree. I agree.
So how did you become so comfortable with conflict, and what can listeners do to be more comfortable with it?
I guess in my case, I don't know. It starts with curiosity. I don't know if that was embedded at birth, but if you're curious, you're not curious about yourself. You're curious about others, and so that just naturally leads to questioning. And as I gained in this industry, a lot more knowledge through the years, as anybody does in any profession, or I would hope so. I would progressively, I've had a tendency to suppress what I know and continue to ask more questions. And in our process initially with prospective clients, we ask, in my view, a lot more questions to understand the other person's situation or to gather more documents, because if I feel that if we gather all the documents and we ask questions and then of course listen to the answers, it becomes self-evident for a particular couple or family what recommendations, what type of tax strategies or investment strategies are appropriate. And when you're in the business of working with families and their life savings, the consequences of being wrong are pretty high. So to me, it's just logical to do that. And because having my own business and doing something essentially I wanted to do since I was a teenager, it's just ingrained in me where I would say I am very much the same person personally as I am in this podcast or as I am talking to one of our clients.
I would agree with that, having known you for several years. Do
It's
you
not always
find,
good though, Charisse. I mean, conflict in that. You and I have had it in it with kind of maybe a negative outcome. Not maybe, but negative outcomes.
yeah,
How do I mess it up?
um,
Turn the
I
tables on that.
I don't think you mess it up. I think it becomes, again, taking something personally and feeling attacked at times. I think that's one of the things that happens regularly in conflict of any kind. And I understand also that marriages are deeply impacted by, well, first of all, money is one of the major
Yeah.
disagreements that a married couple would have. I'm curious about that. Like, in your sessions with your families, do you experience that? And are you moderating conflict, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, there oftentimes is a different point of view between a husband and a wife, and also I think everybody would view their own lives as very, very busy. And so, as important as money and financial planning and planning for retirement and all that, as important as it is, it's typically not on the front burner. So, when I am talking to prospective clients and clients, I would say that a lot of the questions that I ask have never been contemplated before. And so I'm absolutely a moderator and everything that goes into the definition of being a moderator slash counselor. And, I think it's important to serve, if there's a difference of opinion in a couple, sometimes I'm softening one person's viewpoint or the words that they say for the other and vice versa. Now, for me, I find that very interesting and fascinating because then I have conflict right in front of me, and usually part of the purpose of being a moderator is to moderate conflict for of course a successful outcome. So the communication is just so important. I see it as somewhat of an art form. I love it. Besides being purposeful, I love the the game of it, if I can use that point of view.
Yeah.
But I know that you mentioned what I've learned just in the last 2 or 3 years, and I think maybe most particularly within my marriage, and this also just trying to be self-aware and studying myself and hiring coaches and consultants, is I've realized that I process information extremely fast. I see that as a virtue. However, I've come to understand that other people, equally or more smart than me, process information in a different way. And that's not good or bad. It's just different, just like personalities, or some people in our audience may be familiar with the love languages, and there's not a right or wrong love language. So in the last couple years, I've slowed down tremendously in my questioning, in my listening before I come back with a thought or a suggestion or a recommendation. That's been really difficult for me internally. Internally, it even feels like I'm being condescending to slow down. However, it's been tremendously effective, and by effective I mean that there's more of a connection between me and the couple or the individual, and then that results in good outcomes. So I think constantly focusing inward on self-awareness, and I might like conflict, but if it's not working for the people I'm serving, it's because it's not about me when I'm sitting and talking to a family or a couple.
It's not about your need to be right.
Correct. Now you go back 25 years, and I needed to not only be right, but I needed to make sure that you knew that I thought I was right. So that arrogance and immaturity has mostly been squeezed out of me, I would say.
You just described my 42-year-long marriage with my husband. He's got a slow processor. It took me a long time to realize that, and I was fairly arrogant in our early marriage as well, and it did not serve anything. So
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah, and then there's a real opportunity of balance, because certainly in a marriage we should balance each other. Because I can see things in Dawn she can't see. She can see things in me I can't see. But yeah, as always, if you don't get to the understanding of those differences and how they can work against or for you, it's difficult to take what can be a real strength and move forward.
And slowing down definitely offers a value.
Yeah.
In my case and yours.
I agree.
So how do you turn that conflict that might happen into something more productive? How do you do that? Like, say you're in a visit with a family. What do you do to?
And usually I don't get it. Usually I'm not in conflict in that situation unless I'm meeting somebody for the first time and they bring some arrogance to that first meeting, which then as sport, I find that great and interesting. But if there's one universal antidote that is likely to improve the situation, is to simply slow the pace of communication and ask a question or two. Because most people do like to talk about themselves, and it's, unless you're asking a snarky question, if you're asking a question, you're showing interest in somebody else and doing less talking. So I think that's kind of the universal. And I guess I would, if I had a couple that I'm working with in a Zoom like this, and they had conflict, then that's where I'm probably going to ask a question of one or the other, because the conflict, usually when you actually see that go on in front of you with a couple, or in my experience, you have a dominant spouse in the conflict, and then the other spouse, can't find his or her voice. I can see that, and so I can be their voice and try to even it out.
Yeah. What part do assumptions play in communication, effective communication?
Well, when you say can you give me a little bit more as far as what assumptions you would be thinking of?
Well, I was just thinking about how when you have that couple that's one has a voice stronger than the other, and I think there's probably some assumptions going on there. I think probably the voice that's stronger believes they're right, and the one that's quieter believes they're right but doesn't have the voice to say it.
Yeah, and it's certainly in the Zoom world or in person, body language in that scenario is key.
Yeah.
Because that's, and maybe it's not as easy to see for other people, but I've just done this my whole life, thousands of interviews. And so that's instructive if the person, because I've seen couples, and it's been with Dawn and I, if the topic is such where I'm an expert or she's an expert, I mean, just because one person is communicating the most doesn't mean that we have kind of conflict or anything, anything negative. I would back up a bit. One question I've always asked, or for, I don't know, decades, when I first meet a prospective client, within the first couple of minutes after, the weather and such, is what's been your experience with my industry? What's been good and not so good when you've worked with, a broker, a financial planner, or even an insurance agent? And in leading with questions, because I think when a prospective client meets me for the first time, they are coming to the meeting with assumptions that I have a sales pitch for them,
Yep.
which I do not. So actually, to back up another half step, the first question I ask is, how might I be able to help you? My thinking is they assume that I've got this great whatever for you and the person before you and the person after you, but that demands them to articulate why they are here and how they assume I might be able to help them or not. So, for example, the arrogant person, the do-it-yourselfer, might say, "I don't know, you tell me." And then I have to spin out, and then in that example I would go to, well, what's been your experience with my industry? Good, not so good, and a lot of times with a lot of arrogance, maybe they're a do-it-yourselfer who hasn't ever worked with a financial professional, or if they did, it was negative. So I might say, well, gosh, you made it this far without a financial professional. Why are we talking now? What do you think's missing? So I would just kind of keep coming back to, because they've got to be thinking something. Nobody wants to waste their time, without purpose. So for me, it's coming back through questions, but then also being self-aware, Charisse, of, okay, these are all reps, and I'm going to have a lot of initial visits with people that I want to help if they desire to be helped. And so that kind of hones my craft, if you will, over time, even though every interaction is unique.
Yeah, I get that. I wonder if that person, the do-it-yourselfer person, is put off by that idea that, well, how do you think I can help you? Because they're expecting you to have answers if they're coming to you, right?
Yeah, and I think about it. It's like you walking into a physician's office for the first time and saying, "I don't feel good, fix me."
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't have any information. I don't have quantitative information. I don't have qualitative information. I do believe, or I've seen it in my 34-year career, where people in my industry look at it as, I've got a great sales pitch. I've got, a great investment portfolio or whatever, and it's more about just selling the idea in the portfolio and being really talented as a salesperson, which is certainly a talent, and then getting their share of clients in that way. I think it does set that up in the consumer's mindset often.
Right.
And I'm always looking for ways to differentiate, but in this case, I also think it's much more effective. Because again, ultimately, if the prospective client and I work together, we're going to have done our collective due diligence, and it's going to be, round peg, round hole, square peg, square hole, and everybody's going to feel really good about it. We have a lot of success with do-it-yourselfers because we've got a business model that that fits their situation often, where we don't proactively invest. They don't have accounts with us. Simply the do-it-yourselfer pays me for what I know and the time to share it with them. So they still have complete autonomy in implementation and choosing investments. It's fiduciary because they can, receive my advice and then, tell me to pound sand. But, it's not tied to any particular product. But I think open-minded prospective clients that are do-it-yourselfers like that with life changes or maybe once a year, they can meet with a professional fiduciary and say, okay, is there something I'm missing? Because I've done this full-time at a high level for many, many years. And so it's not very illogical for a do-it-yourselfer who kind of does it whenever they do it to think that they can, I guess, compete on that level. But that also doesn't mean from their perspective that, paying me for everything I have to offer could be paying too much relative to the value I provide to that do-it-yourselfer. And that's where the dialogue, again, with open-minded do-it-yourselfers and myself works real well.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we're coming to the end of our conversation.
Sounds great. No conflict with that.
No conflict. I agree.
At all.
We have consensus.
Yes, we absolutely have consensus. And for anybody who's listening, it's easy to find us if they want more information. Our website, www.poterack.net. That's Poterack.net. We're also out there on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I am Ryan Poterack. Charisse, you looking forward to the holidays?
I am. We get to have Halloween with my grandchildren this year.
Nice. Well, that's good. Lincoln, he's done with Halloween. He turns 12 in less than 2 weeks, and he's just not into costumes and all that. I'm sure this will come on after Halloween, but nonetheless, our consensus on Halloween and our belief in holidays, I think, is important for the audience.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure this won't get edited out.
No. All right, Charisse, will you enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show, or get a copy of Making It Count, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet by Ryan Poterack, visit www.poterack.net or give us a call at 704-366-5776. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Poterack Capital Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Poterack Capital Advisory does not offer legal or tax advice. Please consult the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. Nothing contained herein is to be considered a solicitation, research material, an investment recommendation, or advice of any kind. The information contained herein may contain information that is subject to change without notice. Any investments or strategies referenced herein do not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or particular needs of any specific person.
Product sustainability must be independently determined for each individual investor. Poterack Capital Advisory explicitly disclaims any responsibility for product suitability or suitability determinations related to individual investors.